Today we have with us a very special guest who is visiting Pakistan. We have Kaja Kallas, who is the Vice President of the European Commission, and also she is heading the European Union's Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, and she is the former Prime Minister of Estonia. Thank you very much for gracing our show with your presence.
Thank you for having me.
You already spoke about the EU-Pakistan strategic dialogue, and we know that peace and security is also part of this strategic dialogue. You also praised the role of Pakistan for a ceasefire between United States and Iran. But today there are violations of this ceasefire from both sides. United States attacked Iran, Iran attacked Kuwait, and everybody is disturbed. So, what do you see the future of this region and the international economy if this war starts again?
No, this is in everybody's interest that this war stop and really the Strait of Hormuz is opened, because we are all paying a very high price, some with the higher energy costs, some also with fertilizers missing the market, and that is causing also famine maybe next year. So there's a lot of things that are dependent on the Strait of Hormuz being open. So I've really commended Pakistan for being the mediator, to trying to bring the parties together, but eventually they have to agree. And of course everybody is hoping for the signature for the first phase talks, because then it will be also followed by talks regarding the more difficult topics like nuclear. So clearly in the geopolitical picture it has an effect on all, and if we look at more regionally, then of course the stability of your region is also in our interest, because our neighbors' problems today are our problems tomorrow, and we are very much all interlinked.
If, God forbid, the Strait of Hormuz is not opened, there is no breakthrough between United States and Iran, then what will be the strategy of the European Union? Do you have any plan B?
Clearly if we look at the Strait of Hormuz, then it's a choke point. So what are we doing? Of course we have the naval operation Aspides, but it's a defensive operation to escort the ships while the hostilities are over, once the conditions allow. We are also looking forward to diversifying our trade routes and supply chains, because clearly when you are dependent in one route, then in the long term these things could happen again. And we see this also from other countries around the world, looking for alternatives to the partnerships that they have had so far, in order to diversify and really share the risks.
The world peace is facing many challenges these days. On one hand, Israel is violating the human rights in Gaza, attacking Lebanon. Even the Israelis are killing the UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. On the other side, Russia is also violating human rights in Ukraine. They have killed thousands of civilians. Just few days ago, a Russian drone was crashed in a Romanian city in a residential area. So, do you see any parallels between Mr. Putin and Netanyahu, and who will stop them?
Well, I see parallels in all these crises that you mentioned, and this is the underlying undermining of international law, because we have the UN Charter that is very clear. You can't attack another country, you have to respect the sovereignty, territorial integrity of another country. But we really need to use this time to also develop the international law further, so that there would be accountability, because what happens if you breach the international law? Why the rules are eroded is because not that the principles are wrong, but because we haven't really enforced the principles, and nobody should be above the law.
So you think that the international law is the ultimate casualty, both by Russians and the Israelis?
Well, clearly, when the Russians started the war, I mean, brutally attacking another country, this is not allowed in the United Nations Charter. And by the way, you know, if you look at the same kind of conflicts when Iraq invaded Kuwait, and you listen to the speeches made in the United Nations, exactly the same. So if you take Iraq and put Russia, and if you take Kuwait and put Ukraine, you get the same. But the result was different. And why? Because then the international community agreed that we are not letting it go, because UN Charter is very clear, and there was a global response. We haven't had that global response for those crises that you have mentioned.
You spoke about trade relations between EU and Pakistan. And Pakistan is the beneficiary of the GSP Plus status. And I know that this GSP Plus status is going through a very strict monitoring, because it is related with more than 27 international conventions. So what do you want from Pakistan to do for the extension of this GSP Plus status?
Yes, that is actually one of the elements that we were talking also with our counterparts today. Yes, this preferential access to our market is also conditional, and it is true that we have this report coming up in July, and then a question of renewal of these preferences. Pakistan is the biggest beneficiary of this kind of scheme in the world. So it's clearly in your interest, but also what is required, and you rightly mentioned, you know, the conventions that have to be adopted, and mainly the issues of human rights that we need to see also improvement on, because these are the fundamental values that the European Union stands for, and as this renewal process also goes via the European Parliament, they are always scrutinizing this in very intense format. So we were raising all these issues. What more can we do? What more can be done by Pakistan to improve the situation?
Well, the Pakistani side must have told you that they are making a lot of legislation to meet all the conditions. Are you satisfied?
Well, our counterparts were, yes, mentioning what they are doing in one or the other files, but it's clearly you know, something that we need to show, where we also need to show and see improvements. So we were putting forward some very concrete questions. Hopefully there is time for improvement in those areas, and then we can, you know, renew this scheme easily.
Because you yourself was a member of the European Parliament, and you are answerable to the European Parliament.
Yes, of course, when I was in the European Parliament, I think, you know, the European Parliament today is even tougher than it was back then. But it's clearly, I mean, they are the ones who are also putting pressure on us so that we can ask these questions, and hopefully our Pakistani counterparts also see this, and there is improvement made.
And my last question, many people in Pakistan want to know that why the Russians issued a arrest warrant for you. Is it a blackmailing tactic? Why they're angry with you?
Yeah. No, this is a good question, but I think it's a threatening tactic to create fear, so that you know, I would refrain from, you know, taking strong positions on issues that are fundamental for the security of Europe. But I think, you know, the only response to that is not to be afraid.